Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 69 of Petey's Awesome Guest Panel. And tonight's guest is a veteran voice actor, one that I respect so much. You may know this gentleman's work on such mega projects like Muppet Babies, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Pound Puppies. This man is the epitome of every 80s and 90s cartoon growing up to all 80s and 90s kids worldwide. Now, before we introduce tonight's guest star, tonight's guest co-host, I want to once again welcome back the returning Mr. Kwame Jacobs.
Hey guys, I'm back. This is the second time.
Always a pleasure to have you, Kwame. Now,
Thanks.
no problem. And to introduce tonight's guest star, Mr. Greg Berg. Greg, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, doing fantastical, sir.
Sounds good.
So good to see you. Now, before we get into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Muppet Baby questions, Mr. Berg, I do have one cliche question, if that's many people would call it, and that is, okay, sorry, Greg. And the first question is, how did you get your first start into voice acting? Take me there.
Well, when you talk about voice acting or just doing voices, what do you prefer?
Oh, run the gamut. Run both.
Been at this for 40 years. So when I first started enjoying doing voices, it was when I was in grade school, and I was able to imitate a teacher or two, and even some relatives in my family, because I was growing up in the Midwest in my teens in Ohio, and there wasn't really an accent. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, but I lost the accent, or probably didn't have one. Wasn't there long enough to get it. And so I had this ability to hear accents and certain patterns of speaking growing up around my relatives from the Midwest, because my mom was from New York as well, and she had a slight accent, and I was always able to compare hearing people talk and say, well, why don't they talk like she does? And I understood there's different areas that had dialects and accents and different personalities of how they express themselves. So you might know people that scream a lot, or you know people that are very soft-spoken. So I had that whole mix going for me growing up with the different people we knew and related to, and I started imitating them. And somebody said, you know, you could make money doing those, coming up with voices and doing them for TV commercials, cartoons, whatever. And they put that in my mind, and then eventually I wound up moving to Los Angeles, because this was where all that kind of work took place. It's very rare in the Midwest like that. So yeah, I came to Los Angeles, started studying with people who worked with people who can do different voices, and then was put on the marketplace, and people who needed what I did gave me a call.
Cool. Very cool.
And I think if I'm supposed to do this to give information to the viewers, yeah, I mean, I started right where I was at and built up from there. And that's why I tell some people that they can do too. Because a lot of them say, oh, I can't get to Los Angeles. You know, start where you're at. Maybe you have a place like a library to do a reading at, voices or regular voices, reading books to kids. You'll exercise that ability yourself.
I see. And as a voice actor for over 40 years, though, I got to ask this question. I ask this question to all voice actors that come on the show. And that is, do you have any pre-recording, like preparations or rituals that you would do before like recording, like to help prep you, or warm-ups, or you would recommend to a voice actor?
Well, I do have some copy of material that if I'm coaching somebody one-on-one, I would put them through, or even if I gave a little workshop with people, I would run them through some exercises just to loosen their mouth, or it depends what level they're at too. Professional speakers should hopefully always be able to speak correctly. If they get a little mumble mouth or whatever, then yeah, you can throw in a little exercise to loosen it up. But as a rule, I don't have something that I do in particular going into doing voices.
Oh, okay.
'Cause I think I take on the personality and then I just start talking like that person, but that's my particular case.
I see.
Other people will, yeah.
I'm sorry. What did you say, sir?
Other people may need a little warm up and that kind of thing because it depends what kind of occupation they have, whether they don't talk much during the day, and if they're going in to speak for something, you want to be able to get all the words out correctly and simply. So
Oh,
people
okay.
who might be starting out may want to practice some rituals. I mean, I took workshops, and within the workshops, they gave us tests to if we in case we needed it, but it wasn't always like let's start now, warm up, and do this. So
Oh,
at least in my particular case.
oh, okay. Kwame, do you have any comments or questions for Greg at the moment?
Not not at the moment. I don't really have anything to say at the moment. I don't really know what to ask, really.
You can ask anything, man. It's open forum.
Yeah, I know, but don't
When
even
when
know.
you when you get a question though,
Having fun
get back.
watching him, it sounds like.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's having fun just watching in as well.
uh, I have another acting related question too. According to the auto commentaries from The Simpsons in one episode, Kirk Douglas, when he appeared on The Simpsons one time during recording, he hated wearing what you're wearing right now, headphones. When doing voice acting, do you prefer wearing headphones or no?
Most of the time, I will use one side only so I can hear what might be in the room as well, rather than through the microphone. When I was in radio, that used to be, I used to do various positions in radio, producing or having a show in itself, playing records. And many of the jockeys always preferred headphones so they can hear their own voice and make it sound like a very slick radio announcer. But you don't want that anymore when you do regular voiceovers. So today I'm using the headphones only just to hear you through my recording device. But in the studio, I will usually just use one side.
Oh, okay. And I gotta ask you, too, Greg. I mean, you've done many animation projects, but you've also have done some live action stuff too. And you mentioned being you mentioned TV announcers makes a good announcers. You were actually on Married with Children as one of a TV announcer. So I was just curious to know memories of your time working on Married with Children.
Well, there were a couple of projects where I was heard but not seen as an announcer, depending what, again, to me, it was a character, so I put on a typical announcer voice. I came to Los Angeles to do comedy character work at the time in the late 70s, and I took the appropriate classes for it. And after about 2 or 3 years of prepping to really be able to kill. I walked into a room to do different characters for on-camera projects. Shows that needed character comedy people started going off the air, and they start bringing in more thoughtful, brainier comedies where the funny parts were written within the script rather than by the people delivering the lines. And so that wasn't what I was particularly trained in, because then any actor could then fill in the parts as long as it was good material. I would do silly things. At one point, I wanted to approach the Laverne and Shirley people and say, "Hey, can I be like Squiggy's cousin or something like that? Because we both sound alike and we could discover each other when we meet." And so those are the type of characters I can approach for those type of shows. But those shows slowly started leaving, just like variety. I wanted to be a utility performer in a variety shows where in one sketch or scene, in the past they had Sonny and Cher show, and they were the main characters, and they'd have somebody coming into a scene as a waiter or a silly waiter, some guy who gets his hand caught in a door or something like that, and do something really silly. So even that left at the early 80s. So I had to figure out what was I going to do with these characters and the voices I can do. And I was guided into doing commercials and voices for cartoons. So the voices I did on Married with Children was an off-camera voice, but that's where I was able to find a new home to do what I did.
Were there other shows that were similar to that, like where you appeared but you didn't appear in person? It was more like a voice, like was Chips and the Love Boat like that too, or no?
I was on, voice on Chips, also the Love Boat, various voices you might either hear on a radio or somebody from a crowd shouting out something. I'm pretty known or pretty much heard in the other Mark Wahlberg in a scene where it's just my voice and it's supposed to sound like it's coming from the back of a classroom that Mark Wahlberg was taking as his cop character and learning how to handle a firearm. And so you'd hear my voice in the back because he actually in the movie shoots Derek Jeter and accidentally, and so he has to take this training for firearms. And in the back of the classroom, you hear me, "You should have shot A-Rod." And that was just a test voice to put into that particular scene. But in the testing, audience testing, people found out that it was a very fun line, and even the director I heard his offline comments movie that he ever written. So I was the one that delivered it. And so they bring me in for things like that, just people you don't see. There was a TV show called Sliders, and very briefly, it's a backwards show where, like, in scenes heard in was somebody was watching Gilligan's Island in this weird universe that they were in, and in the show itself, Gilligan was the role of the skipper, and the skipper was Gilligan, and so you'd hear some of the other characters within the scene that somebody is watching in this universe. And so I played the voice of Gilligan, and don't see me, but you hear it coming from a TV. So things like that, people might need a voice for a show, and either you could either see me or hear me, because I'm also keeping myself open to do on-camera work. They just need a line or two, somebody walking in the door saying, "By the way," and he's on the door or something like that. But and that's part of the character work I like doing, whether it's for TV, movies, or on stage, just being silly. That's what I do.
Cool. And I have to ask you too, because one of my favorite animation shows you did will always be Muppet Babies. Now, I gotta ask you as a request, Greg, for the people that don't know who you voiced on Muppet Babies, like my sister Elissa, who was a huge fan of Muppet Babies growing up, and watched it with my parents, and also Kwame, would you please tell me the characters you did voice?
Well, sure. For those who are familiar with the show, because I could have easily said I was this voice or that voice, and know if they didn't follow the show or were a fan of the Muppets. Basically, the Muppet Babies is based on taking the Muppets and making them babies, and so they needed people to do a younger voice match for the characters. So I was sent a copy of Fozzie Bear, Kermit, Scooter, which are the male characters in the show, and I gave my idea of what Fozzie Bear, the bear that tells the jokes, waka waka waka, always bright-tailed and bushy-eyed. And so
that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Well, thank you. I'm glad everybody liked my performance in order to put me into the position. And I remember Scooter. I mean, he was a nondescript character. If you watch the shows, he's more like the guy on the set coordinating everything on the actual Muppet Show, where his grown-up voice is more like saying, like, "Come on, Miss Piggy, you have 5 more minutes to get on stage. Let's go, everybody. Come on, get together, everybody." And so I said, what would he be like if he was just a kid? And I kind of did like a kid's voice at first. And then I started making him a little whiny because he's always having questions too and trying to get his point across. So Scooter was like this, working on the computers all the time too because he's pretty bright. So, and then sometimes they'd have me talk to Scooter as Fozzie, and a lot of them were without any kind of clipping. It's just a technique I was able to do. So Fozzie Ben saying, hey, Scooter, can you write me some jokes this morning? Oh, okay, Fozzie, I'm busy on the computer right now putting a storybook together, but I'll write it in a minute. Okay, let me know when you're ready. So that's the art of flipping into one voice to another. But it's all coming from up here and in here, knowing the character in a second like that, who you're speaking at.
What was it like?
It's an art for voice people later.
Oh, what was it like working with the cast members? Lucy Taylor, Katie Lee, Frank Welker.
Well, we had a dynamite cast because I've worked with Katie Lee back in 1982, and Muppet Babies started in '84. But I wasn't familiar with her full line of work until we were matched up once again. So I said, there must be something here to play off of each other and watch from her to learn, because she may have been doing it longer than I was. But yeah, working with Katie Lee, Lucy Hill, all of the names that you mentioned. Barbara Billingsley was a TV veteran from Leave It to Beaver. And here we are all in the one room. Now, I was kind of geared up for that because earlier I was practicing with a lot of the greats in the past in auditions. So sometimes you might get nervous, but all my life since I was a teenager, I worked around celebrities of high stature and beginning stature. So that part didn't make me any nervous. I just went in there, did my job. Frank Oz performed a character who was the voice of the grown-up father, the original father. So I looked at him saying, what's he doing that I can do, and what I follow from being involved with a talented group like that. So
I see. Um, now you've also worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as an alternate for Donatello. Memories of working on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and did you ever get to work with Barry Gordon?
That answer would be no, not for any of his work. It's interesting because before I knew of Barry's work, not fully, but something here and there. And I had been brought in for something that used his voice in the past. He also was the president of the Screen Actors Guild. So I've come across him while he was serving as the president, and I'd see him occasionally at an event or but he's a super nice. He was younger, and here he is being the voice for Donatello, and they needed somebody to sound like him. It wasn't that I pushed him out to do his voice. It had to do where the Actors Union, he had to attend certain meetings, and in that case, miss the recordings for the Ninja Turtle. They needed to get those shows out, and they did the search for somebody who could sound like his character. Aside from Donatello, he was also the voice of Bebop. And there again is the two voices. You've got Donatello, who's very methodical, and he's trying to new a way to Krang and Bebop and Rocksteady. Then also playing Rocksteady and Bebop, two of us actors were there. Rocksteady and Bebop, kind of like Thunder, and he sounds a lot different than Donatello. So, there's another opportunity to play a couple of characters. And again, since Barry did both, I had to be able to accomplish doing both.
Oh, okay. And memories, of course, of
Yeah.
working on The Simpsons episode Bart versus Thanksgiving. Now, you had many roles in this episode. You were the announcer on TV. You were the announcer, the radio host for Hooray for Everything on Simpsons, and you were also Mr. Burns' security guard. And I remember to this day your lines for both
Yeah.
those characters. And I remember it was like when he said, "Hooray for everyone! The most partiest Western ever, the Western Hemisphere, the danciest hemisphere on the whole planet." I just loved your delivery on that line.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on
Well,
the what'd you say?
oh, I was just saying, agreeing with you that you did remember the character and lines that we did in particular. A lot of people have seen that episode, so yeah, if I were to go up and do just that line, it would be Simpsons, right? And
Yes.
So that's great.
Now I gotta ask you, you worked on many voiceover projects, and this question is gonna me sound like a nerd asking this question, but when I'm not dieting, I am a huge foodie. And this is gonna lead to my next question is, which animation production company had the best catering scene?
I don't think back then when I was doing what I was doing, they provided any kind of dinners. They might have a snack here or there. When I do movies, we had a little a basket of snacks to choose from in between. And when I say doing movies, I do ADR, which is automatic dialogue replacement on movies, where if they had a crowd scene and people were pointing to a plane in the sky, some might say, "Look, it's a plane." And say, "Hey, did you see that?" So they would hire people like me, because you don't see them on camera, or you see just people pointing, and they might want it to sound like there's a big crowd there or that they're saying something. So they hire somebody like me with a flexible voice in most cases to provide those voices. So while we're at recording that, that's usually an 8-hour day in some cases. And so basket of snacks of some sort or another, and then you get your little lunch break to take off for the hour or come back. But as far as providing, if you wanted a snack or not, it was there. Then nothing really stands out.
Did Revenge of
They
the
had, I was gonna say if they had pizza and sandwiches and all that, that would be fun. But again, to me, I try not to eat when I'm before working. Then you kind of come back a little logy, and so I eat light in between when I do eat.
Oh, okay. And now
Yeah.
you actually returned to Muppets in 2011 in the movie The Muppets as a stage manager. Memories of working in the 2011 Muppet movie.
Well, that was where they needed the ADR. Once again, I was the voice on the speaker just before the charity show that came together, and I was basically a couple lines about ready to go, or Scooter will get on the set, and 3, 2, 1, and then the charity show takes place. So I was again brought in that case. It just took a few minutes to do those particular lines, but I was very honored to be part of that, and being probably one of the first actual Muppet babies to be in a Muppet movie.
Oh, and since we're on this, since we're on the subject like of Muppets, so like Muppet Babies recently came out with a CGI reboot. What's your thoughts on the particular reboot?
Well, I never got a chance to watch any episodes because I don't have that particular channel. But when I go to conventions, get a lot of compliments of how good the first animated Muppet Babies was.
Oh, okay. And I just have a couple more questions before we conclude, Greg. The other question is I had for the show was another film, not film. I'm sorry. The animation company. No, the films. You've also worked on Toy Story. Memories of shooting the 1995 Toy Story, where I think you were the soldier that got stepped on by the mom during Andy's birthday.
Well, let's see. I did a few characters there, and probably even the studio couldn't remember who I was because in future movies where they had the character I did, uh, I wasn't called for it. And usually that's the case when there's so many characters, people didn't keep track of the minute uh, characters in there, but it was noticeable. I was the voice of the electronic doors that opened at Pizza Planet when Woody and Buzz were trying to get away and get inside the arcade. So as the doors open and split open, mine was the electronic voice going, "Welcome to Pizza Planet." And they've used it in another movie or another, but they didn't use me for it because they probably said, "Who in the heck even did that?" They didn't keep track because they didn't. Well, they gave us credit actually at the end of the movie. It's just my name of who participated. But it didn't say all the little characters that they needed and used me and the others for. I was probably one of the other army men that sneak out of the toy canister at night, and I wasn't the main one. So sometimes at conventions, people say, "Oh, you were this guy," and they had me trying to sign a picture of the original guy. So I just said, "No, I was one of the other men just saying, this way, quick, come on, follow us." And little things that they still needed to fill in the picture.
Oh,
So that's part of what I did there. I mean, we met. He just said, "Here's a movie. Here's John Lasseter and the group," and took it from there when they needed this or that.
did you have a favorite Muppet Babies episode?
Wow, we did over 100, and uh, every once in a while a song might stick out because I think they use a song in almost every episode, and I would sing as Scooter and Ozzy, and sometimes both in one song. I just enjoyed. There's a couple of songs that came to mind. The "You're Special to Me," which was the Valentine show, and we
Oh,
called
I
My
cried.
Muppet Valentine.
I cried when I heard that.
So yeah, it's a tearjerker, and really meant a lot to us. That part of this mission. Katie Lee was the main singer in that, and it was very touching to hear her sing and how she more or less dedicated it to the things she made on the show. And one of my favorite songs was "Artist for Your Heart," which is a little brainy for a little kid, but it was trying to get the message across. One of the lines was about art was, "It's music for your eyes."
Hmm.
And I can understand that very well. And I could relate with,
Ah,
share that with people. Art, uh,
my,
anyway.
one of
But
my
Fozzie got to go in there and use us all to show our talent and song every once in a while.
okay. Now I gotta. One of the final questions I had for you was,
Wait, go on.
yeah, you have a question?
Just one, actually.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. In TMNT, when you played as Donatello, who
Yes.
what did you like? What did you like about it?
Uh, you mean the show or the character or
The
getting
character
the
in
part?
general. Character in general.
At that point, it wasn't a super hit as it is today. It kind of grew that way. So when I do a convention and sometimes sign a character picture of Donatello, I'm kind of humbled by it because I was on about 6 of the episodes. Some of them went to VHS at the time when they were doing that. Uh, so me being there, I said, I'm glad I was picked for the role, but I'm not trying to take it away from the original. I had no idea what the show uh, had for an impact on people at the time. It was just a silly show by the sound of its Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so as it grew, it turned into various character traits that each of these turtles had. So I'm sure Barry, getting into it, knew whether to be strong or sensitive or whatever. In my case, I was there to pick up what I can from the character And that's what I say when I think of Donatello. I'm saying he's the guy that was always the smart one, trying to figure something out to come up with a new invention to capture the enemies or work against them. So as far as Donatello goes, I was very honored to be part of it, and but the guys who are out there now that still reprise those roles, that's their characters, and I was just the filling in for the voice at the time. But down the line, for other people who follow the show, they did use other voice people to do some of the characters as well for various reasons, and I don't know that. Feel for the. I just remember they had to crank out these shows and said, "Okay, you're this." I said, "Oh, tell me about them." I did that, and I delivered.
Cool.
Okay.
Kwame, you have any other final questions before we conclude?
Nah, I just wanted to ask just one question. I'm good.
Okay, Greg. This is gonna be the final final question for the night, and that is, what's next for Greg Berg? Now, this is where we segue into the final segment of the show, which is my show is an open forum. Which this is the part, Greg, where you could say, talk, promote, hype. You could say literally anything you want. The floor is yours, Greg.
Okay, well, since I do have a Facebook page, I do post when something's going on that I think people might want to look into or know about. So I'm not much of a chatter on Facebook. I love keeping the humor going, and if I see something funny or think of something bizarre or amusing, I like to put it online. And I have all the followers that every once in a while. Some say, "What are you talking about?" But very rarely, because they know I'm there to be fun and play and sometimes insightful. So as far as promoting anything, I don't want to come out and say that something's currently being booked right now. I am involved in the creative process. I just assembled my latest sound-alike voice demo to procure voices for other projects that need a sound-alike, but that's just a small part of what I do. As I said, for movies that use me to come in and sound like a character they couldn't bring in for a reason or another, whether they're busy on another movie. So they hire people like me to do voice alike. So I work on all the sound alikes that I can that might apply to movies somebody might need my services for. Aside from that, I'm still auditioning for some pretty good cartoons these days. Sometimes I used to get cartoons where I'm like, what is this going to be? Or is it even going to turn into a cartoon? I kind of predict in my own way that doesn't look like it's going to turn into something big. But as long as they want to hear me do a voice, I'll be available to do that. So as far as what I'm doing, I'm keeping myself available for on-camera work as well these days, because that's kind of where I started. But some people say, "Oh, you do on camera?" I said, "Well, that's how I started." But then when I started doing 30 more years of voiceovers, some of them didn't know I did voiceovers. So I keep my field open and looking forward to the next opportunity for either doing a voice or a comedy character.
Cool. And Kwame, do you have any final closing lines before we conclude?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Speaking of the old TMNT and other shows, my girlfriend, she's a 90s and 80s girl. She loves TMNT like I do. She's gonna when she sees the video, she's gonna go crazy when she sees this, because she loves the old TMNT as well. She did grow up with it like I did. Well, even though I mostly grew up with the 2003 one. I need to start watching the 80s one as well. But I do have the 1990s live action movie though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to. Yeah, that's all I needed to say.
No
Oh,
worries.
the Turtles not live action, right?
No, I mean, the one in the 1990s that was made.
Yeah, that was the move. That was a live action movie, Kwame.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. And then there was a live action show that used to air on Fox Kids called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle: The Live Mutation. That aired in 1996.
We don't talk about that one.
Oh
my God, my friends, we roast Shredder. He's like the most low budget Shredder we have ever seen. And honestly, when I showed them, we literally laughed so hard.
Oh man. Greg, there's a couple of things I just want to say to you before we conclude though. First of all, let me just say that I want to thank you for not only coming on and giving an amazing interview, but thank you for those years of those childhood memories you gave me watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, watching Pound Puppies, watching Simpsons, you name it, everything you did. You are not only an icon, you are a voice acting legend. And I'm gonna say this, like you have the ability. I'm gonna say I said this to like mainly every guest star I had because it's the truth. You have this ability, Greg, that you could take a 34-year-old, a 34 or 32-year-old fan, any kind of age, and bring him down here and make him feel like he's 7 again.
So that means if I can still make you cry by saying, look a little bit closer.
Oh, please don't do that. Please don't do that. We don't need to see the waterworks. We don't need to see that. No, but I will say this though, like I told Katie Lee, and this is a shout out to you, Katie, if you're watching this, that I absolutely loved what you did, Greg. I absolutely loved what Katie did on Muppet Babies. I told Katie when I had her on my show, I said that you made me cry when I was younger twice. You and Greg Berg made me cry as a kid twice watching Muppet Babies.
Well, that's so sweet of you, and I'm glad it touched your heart.
Did and
Shows how talented you are.
Thank you. And I just have one last thing before we conclude, and something that you deserve, Greg, and that is thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I mean, without you guys watching, it would never be heard.
And just want to say thank you again, and you have an awesome night. Kwame, thank you again for joining me, and I will send a copy to use later today when it's fully edited.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds great.
So, have a great night, gentlemen.
See ya.
Bye-bye.